The Fed cut rates again. Yerp. Fed lowers interest rates, but future cuts uncertain. What is that? The third rate cut we've gotten? Oh yeah, third time this year. There you go. Even as internal divisions create uncertainty. What are we down to now? Lowering its target for its key lending rate by 0.25 percentage points, its lowest level in 3 years. Nice, 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 nice. Look at my economy, dog. Did you guys see, was it Howell who posted it? That Trump admin official who posted like, check it out, guys. The rates have never been higher as they are under the Trump administration. He was bragging about the rate increase for the Treasury yield for government bonds. Am I remembering this correctly? He was bragging about high bonds. That's so fucking funny, dude. Guys, check it out. Look, people believe in our government so little that they're not buying bonds. A lot of roidoids bragged about high bond yield. No, dude, the barrel of this gun tastes delicious. Yeah, fucking liberal. I bet you don't even have a gun in your mouth. It was Besant, not Howell. Thank you. That makes more sense. U.S. Treasuries are having their best year since 2020, and the investors who had confidence and faith in Trump's economic policies have been richly rewarded. Check it out. Bond market returns. Yeah! Check it out, guys. Bond market returns. Isn't that great? Keynesian's having a stroke right now? Yeah, well, you know. Fed also restarted QE. Wait, really? Do you have an article on that? In that press conference, Powell was basically dodging every question. He was constantly saying there's no way to go forward without risk. Basically, he had a gun in his mouth half the time. Yeah, Powell might end up being he might end up being like Pam Bondi in the sense that he gets ostracized within the administration because he's not that good at touting the line. He's so obviously aware of how bad things are going right now. We're restarting QE? Oh, no. Ah, fuck, I don't have a goddamn Reuters subscription. I don't believe I should have to pay a subscription to read fucking Reuters, okay? That's insane. $1 per week. Ridiculous. What's QE? Quantitative easing. Fed could surprise market with T-bill buying binge. Oh, no. Oh, no. You know what this is? The last time we did this, it was after 2008. The admission here essentially is that the economy is so bad that even though there hasn't been a crash yet, where the conditions that they're trying to prevent are similar to the ones after the subprime mortgage crash. Rate cuts plus QE at the same time. I'm so ready. Are they pre-crashing? I'm buying gold right now. on my third monitor. You can't see it, but I'm buying gold right now. 45 billion of monthly short-term bill purchases. That's the out-of-consensus call from Bank of America's rate strategist to reckon the Federal announcement. Federal announced to start large quantities of Treasury bills in January and maintain ample reserves in the banking system. Oh, no! Ample reserves in the banking system and avert the kind of liquidity crunch that froze money markets in September 2019. They're scared of bank runs, huh? Yeah? Panic sell everything. It's all so fucking over. Warren Buffett. Look at that downward trend since the beginning of 2025. What's the most recent data? This is from September 12th, but I don't know what like the most recent data point it's pulling from. Bank reserves being so low is not good. No. I mean, there's still a decent amount of padding here, but the trend is not looking good. Also, if people really did make a run, I mean, if people really called, this would evaporate overnight, you know? Oh, fuck. Dude, oh, fuck. They have to keep the padding higher because of the AI bubble. If the AI bubble pops, the amount, like this buffer will be worth nothing. As the bubble gets larger, the buffer you need is larger too, because if it does pop and everything falls apart, you need that much more. So right now, 3 trillion isn't enough. It's not even enough. You would probably need it to be well above any like record levels. You would need a glorpillion. That's true. The plan won't come out of left field. Most Fed watchers already expect the central bank to begin buying bills in the first half of next year. Oh, no. No one knows how low reserves can get before triggering a liquidity crisis and a spike in interbank borrowing costs, but September 2019 was around 1.4 trillion. Yeah, but there wasn't a massive bubble back in 2019, so we don't know if anything's going to happen that would prompt an immediate run. I'm not economically literate enough to know all this. I'm not straight enough for this. It's important. It is important. It's very important. It's extremely important. Have we had a job report released since October? I don't think so. Do we have a full job report? This will likely give the economy a bit of a boost next year and prevent the AI bubble from bursting. Okay, real talk, guys. How long before people start calling the United States government on its debt? We are reaching really like catastrophically high levels of borrowing. And the interest that we're paying on that loans every year, I feel like before long we're going to start getting our credit rating downgraded. Japan is threatening now. Yeah, but a lot of the money is held internally. So how long until Americans or American institutions start going like, we'd like that money back now, please? You know, it's not that simple. Callable debt comes with rate penalties. Yeah, but like if you're that pessimistic about the future of the country, I feel like people would take that. They have to divest first, so it'll only happen after they do so to a reasonable degree. Maybe. I guess it depends on how bad the debt gets, really. Is this real? Fed Chair Powell, conditions in the labor market are cooling and inflation remains somewhat elevated. ChatGPT, how do you say stagflation without saying stagflation? Try something like conditions in the labor market are cooling, yet inflation remains somewhat... I don't know if that's real. Breaking home prices in the US to go negative for the first time in over 2 years per CNBC. There are so many bubbles. There are so many bubbles, man. It is a bubble bath. 50-ish minutes, you can watch the first 5 to 10. Sure. Okay, we'll watch a little bit after the rate cut. Hi, Howell.
Good afternoon. My colleague.
The housing bubble's not nearly as big. Yeah, but the housing bubble disproportionately affects regular people. The vast majority of residential properties are owned by like regular people, you know, people who own their own homes or maybe landlords who own one additional property, not like 3 big corporate firms. The AI bubble is mostly contained within a few companies. But the housing bubble, like a bunch of people's retirement is tied up in their hopes that the bubble continues to expand.
Colleagues and I remain squarely focused on achieving our dual mandate goals of maximum employment and stable prices for the benefit of the American people. Although important federal government data for the past couple of months have yet to be released, available public and private sector data suggests that the outlook for employment and inflation has not changed as much since our meeting in October. Conditions in the labor market appear to be gradually cooling. And
if housing is actually scarce, it's not a bubble? Well, not necessarily. Housing can be scarce, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's pricing rationally in accordance with the scarcity in any given area, right? Like it's possible for housing to be scarce, but also people are inflating the price past what anyone's willing to pay.
Inflation remains somewhat elevated. In support of our goals, in light of the balance of risks to employment and inflation, today the Federal Open Market Committee decided to lower our policy interest rate by 1/4 percentage point. As a separate matter, we also decided to initiate purchases of shorter-term Treasury securities solely for the purpose of maintaining an ample supply of reserves over time, thus supporting effective control of our policy rate. I will have more to say about monetary policy and its implementation after briefly reviewing economic developments. Although some key government data have yet to be released, available indicators suggest that economic activity has been expanding at a moderate pace. Consumer spending appears to have remained solid, and business...
How is housing scarce when there's enough empty homes to house our homeless population multiple times over? This has always been a pretty dumb lefty talking point if you think about it. A ton of those homes are dilapidated and in the middle of nowhere. And also, a lot of these empty homes are just being like transferred from buyer to buyer or are being kept open for a short length of time on the market, you know? But like a significant number of the houses, you know, that could house every homeless person are shitholes in Louisiana. Like not livable. They're not even up to code, you know? There are like houses people can live. We can build, we do have the space, but it's not as simple as just assigning everyone to an empty house, you know?
Investment has continued to expand. In contrast, activity in the housing sector remains weak.
Yeah.
The temporary shutdown of the federal government has likely weighed on economic activity in the current quarter, but these effects should be mostly offset by higher growth next quarter, reflecting the reopening. In our summary of economic projections, the median participant projects that real GDP will rise 1.7% this year and 2.3% next year, somewhat stronger than projected in September. In the labor market, although official employment data for October and November are delayed, available evidence suggests that both layoffs and hiring remain low, and that both households' perceptions of job availability and firms' perceptions of hiring difficulty continue to decline. The official report on the labor market for September, the most recent release, showed that the unemployment rate continued to edge up, reaching 4.4%, and that job gains had slowed significantly since earlier in the year. A good part of the
Can I just say, by the way, he looks like shit. Layoffs low, you sure about that? Yeah, we're actually reaching like record level of layoffs. This is not a good time to leave your job.
Likely reflects a decline in the growth of the labor force due to lower immigration and labor force participation, though labor demand has clearly softened as well.
That's not good.
In this less dynamic and somewhat softer labor market, the downside...
the synonyms you have to use to pad these stats. He's just reading it all out, but what's the... How do I not say there are fewer jobs, everyone's getting laid off, wages are down, inflation is up?
Risks to employment appear to have risen in recent months.
Risks to employment have risen.
In our SEP, the median projection of the unemployment rate is 4.5% at the end of this year and edges down thereafter. Inflation has eased significantly from its highs in mid-2022, but remains somewhat elevated relative to our 2% longer-run goal. Very little data on inflation have been released since our meeting in October. Total PCE prices rose 2.8% over the 12 months ending in September, and excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core PCE prices also rose 2.8%. These readings are higher than earlier in the year as inflation for goods has picked up, reflecting the effects of tariffs. In contrast, disinflation appears to be continuing for services.
The forever layoffs era hits a recession trigger as corporates sack 1.1 million workers through November. I assume this is from the beginning of the year? Yeah, throughout the year. Jesus Christ, 1.1. And that's only from the private sector? I mean, we're not even counting all the people who were let go from the federal government, for example? With the notable and understandable exception of the pandemic year of 2020, you would have to go back to 2009 to find a year with greater layoffs, and that was in the very depths of the Great Recession. Yeah. Oof.
Near-term measures of inflation expectations have
and the sector getting most hit by layoffs is tech, which is insane because that's where all the money is. We are at a breaking point, man. The idea that as the economy grows, so too do job opportunities is, I mean, it's been bad. Like, that's been bad. It's been a bad argument for centuries, right? But right now we're seeing so evidently how unworkable that paradigm is, how little it gives you, you know? All of the money in the economy, all the growth in the economy, it's in fucking 8 tech companies, and all of them are laying people off right now.
Declined from their peaks earlier in the year, as reflected in both market and survey-based measures. Most measures of longer-term expectations remain consistent with our 2% inflation goal. The median projection in the SEP for total PCE inflation is 2.9% this year and 2.4% next year, a bit lower than the median projection in September. Thereafter, the median falls to 2%. Our monetary policy actions are guided by our dual mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. At today's meeting, the committee decided to lower the target range for the federal funds rate by a 1/4 percentage point to 3.5 to 3.75%. In the near term, risks to inflation are tilted to the upside and risks to employment to the downside, a challenging situation. There is no risk-free path for policy as we navigate this tension between our employment and inflation goals. A reasonable base case is that the effects of tariffs on inflation will be relatively short-lived, effectively a one-time shift in the price level. Our obligation is to make sure that a one-time increase in the price level does not become an ongoing inflation problem. But with downside risks to employment having risen in recent months, the balance of risks has shifted. Our framework calls for us to take a balanced approach in promoting both sides of our dual mandate. Accordingly, we judged it appropriate at this meeting to lower our policy rate by a 1/4 percentage point. With today's decision, we have lowered our policy rate 3/4 of a percentage point over our last 3 meetings. This further normalization of our policy stance should help stabilize the labor market while allowing inflation to resume its downward trend toward 2% once the effects of tariffs have passed through. The adjustments to our policy stance since September bring it within a range of plausible...
It's incredibly frustrating that positions with skills that were previously pretty much guaranteed to land you a job, picked biotech as my degree, believed it would pay itself off. I'm incredibly cooked. Everyone in the field's very doomer about it. You know, there is one bit of good news in that I think we've finally run out of the... we've run out of industries for people to run to as an example of how if you're just hardworking enough, you can make it anywhere. It was like doctor, lawyer, engineer, computer science. Like, there's always been that one field where the parents are like, you know, get into that, you're guaranteed to get a job. Now everything is cooked. There is no field where this is the case. Not trades, not like the labor aristocracy. No one, nowhere. There's nothing you can do at university that guarantees you a good job or even comes close, really. So maybe now that we've run out of cope, we can sit down and deal with the actual problem. You know, like maybe we're at the end of the cycle. Now that tech is gutted, there's nothing else. Okay, now we're like, okay, let's deal with the elephant in the room. None of this works. None of this works.
Plausible estimates of neutral and leave us well positioned to determine the extent and timing of additional adjustments to our policy rate based on the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. In our summary of economic projections, FOMC participants wrote down their individual assessments of an appropriate path of the federal funds rate.
Yeah, that's great.
You had previously described rate cuts in terms of a risk management framework, and kind of following up on what Howard was asking, is the risk management phase of rate cuts over here, and have you taken out sufficient insurance, I guess, against potential weakness in terms of the data we might get next week when it comes to employment?
So we're going to get a great deal of data between now and the January meeting, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that. And the data that we get are going to factor
The
into...
only jobs are going to be live streamer, OnlyFans star, and gambler. You know, Trump did talk about removing taxes for gambled winnings because the whole economy is going to be Kalshi and Poly Market soon, and DraftKings and so on. So yeah, that's going to be like the only way to get ahead. The only way to break out of the lower class in America in 2035 is going to be having the courage and dexterity to sneak into a football game whose tickets you can't afford, throw a rock, beating the head of a player to affect the outcome of the game in a way that you bet on previously, and then coasting those winnings for the rest of your life. That's going to be the only possible way to break out of the cycle. Yeah, you have to escape without getting caught, of course, because they'll have like Palantir laser camera sensors to monitor everyone. There'll be heat vision tracking you. You'll need to... You just got to win the lottery, bro.
Our thinking. But yes, we have, if you go back, we held our policy rate at 5.4% for more than a year because inflation was high, very high, and unemployment and the labor market was really solid at that point. So what happened is over last summer of 24, inflation came down and the labor market began to show real signs of weakness. And so we decided, as our framework tells us to do, that when the risks to the two goals become more equal, you should move from a stance that favors really dealing with one of them, in that case inflation, to a more balanced, more neutral setting. And so we did that. We did some cutting, and then we paused for a while to work our way through what was happening in the middle of the year. And then we resumed cuts in September, and we've cut now 3. We've now cut a total of 175 basis points. And as I mentioned, you know, we feel like...
Did you see Time calling the architects of AI the person of the year, SMH? Well, they're correct, right? The whole point of the Time person of the year is not who's the bestest, it's who's shaped the year, and it's kind of undeniable, right? Kind of feels like the end. Nah, nothing ever ends. Haven't you read The Watchmen? So yeah, economy is cooked. I hate that this cover implies they built anything. That is true. I do dislike that.